Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Reverend Patti Oshita.
Well, I'd like to first thank Reverend Carey for inviting us to participate in this Nembutsu seminar. And we wish we could be with you live, and we hope that day will come. But we're just grateful for technology that allows us to be here and still be a part of this event. When Reverend Carey first mentioned the seminar, he also shared that previously they would have quite academic gatherings talking about the doctrine, but what he wanted to do was to think out of the box and bring in someone that might be able to give some insight into how to grow a temple. And in a way, I'm very honored, Patti and I are very honored to be asked to be a part of this, but we realize only in retrospect what we did that seemed to work here in Sacramento. And we'd like to share this with you today. And these are just our thoughts and what we experienced. And feel free to use or disregard anything that we happen to mention because, you know, different things work at different places. And this is what really worked for us. I'd like to maybe first comment on the title, Change or Die. When Reverend Carey mentioned this, I got very excited. Say, this is quite bold. And when I mentioned this title to one of our friends, Merv Maruyama, he said, change or die. He said, we're Buddhist. Everything dies. Change, don't change. We're still going to die. And had to laugh. But another friend of ours, Bob Matsueda, said that he likes this because there's a sense of urgency to this title, Change or Die. This is I think it's true. We have to feel a sense of urgency, and I'm surprised that we don't, considering that the membership in all of our kyodan, I think, is diminished significantly. If we compare it to the numbers we had 50, 60 years ago, I think we're down probably under 20% of the membership we had. Now, if we lost 80% of our membership, if we were a business, we would be concerned with what we're doing. If we were a restaurant and we lost 80% of our customers, I think we'd be wondering, what should we be doing better? This is certainly not going to work. And, you know, our bodies were functioning at only 20% capacity. We would be in a coma, I think, and perhaps that's what we are. Maybe as an organization, you know, we've become too comfortable, and maybe we are in a kind of a coma. But I'd like to maybe give a little introduction before I continue. And I have my tech person here. Patti, would you help me with this?
Hello, everyone.
Okay. We're trying to be techie here and use PowerPoints, probably maybe second time I've tried to do this. But let me give you maybe a little introduction. I was born in Waverly, Iowa, 1948, August. I was the third of four children born to Sam and Setsuko Oshita. And my dad is actually born in Hilo. And we had quite a few siblings. There were 11 Oshita children. And 3 of my aunties remained in Hilo. So I have cousins there, the Nakamura, Nishimura, Haimoto family. And so in Hawaii alone, I know I have dozens of cousins. But my dad and mom were on the mainland during the war, and they moved to Iowa, where I was born, and my older brother and sister. And then, gee, I'd like to maybe, here's my picture, my first birthday in Waverly, Iowa. And then when I was 2, we moved to San Francisco, and I grew up going to the San Francisco Buddhist Temple. And here we have a picture from 1952. And can everyone see the arrow? Do they see the cursor marker, Patty? Do they see this cursor? Can you see the cursor moving on the pictures?
Yes, we can.
You can? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is Sanada Sensei in the back. And over here is his daughter, Michiko, who is now Michiko Yukawa, Reverend Yukawa's wife. And she is holding her younger brother, Shinji. And this is the Dharma School in San Francisco in 1952. And going back, how do I go back, Patty? This is a picture of me in college. I touched the thing and it went back.
Oh, hold on.
That's one of those images.
That's one of those images you cannot forget.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is Sanada Sensei, and all the boys on this side and all the girls on this side, and then they moved me. Here I am at 4 years old, sitting next to my older sister, and I think this picture was sent to me by my friend. She's sitting behind me. This is Dr. Satsuki Ina, that some of you may be familiar with her work. She's a therapist and wonderful documentarian. She's done some incredible films. And over here on this side, if I could find him, is Willie Masuda. There he is. This is Willie Masuda. And Reverend John Dawami is also in here somewhere. And I think this is, well, anyway, let me move forward. Grew up going to the San Francisco Buddhist Temple. And when I was 16 years old, I think around 16, I stopped going to the temple. It's around that time that I really fully discovered girls and decided, I should go to check them out in different places. I actually went to visit like Christ United and Pine Methodist and the other Japanese churches in the area, the Hong Kong Kyokai. And it wasn't until I was in college that I found myself needing to know more about Buddhism. And it wasn't, and this is an important part of my journey. That's why I mentioned it. I was a psych major in the 1960s, late 60s in Berkeley. And I think it was around the year 1968 as a junior. I was taking a class on personality development and the things that impact on making us who we are. And one of the things is our religious upbringing. And so the professor went around the class and asked people, students, what religion they were. Remember, this is the late 60s, and people were moving away from traditional everything. And the counterculture was really a wonderful movement. And virtually every student said, I'm atheist or agnostic, or I'm not religious, or I have no religion. And it came to me, and I said, yeah, I'm agnostic. I'm not really affiliated with any religion. And the professor said, well, I'm not really interested in what you feel now, but I want to know, what were you raised? What tradition were you raised within? So I said, well, I was raised a Buddhist. And in the late 60s, I mean, there was a real interest, a growing interest was beginning, especially on the West Coast, I think. And you could feel it. The room was like, whoa, we have we have a guy here who's a Buddhist, grew up, and he speaks English. And so one of the students just, unconsciously said, wow, that's cool. What's Buddhism about? And there are all these ears waiting for me to say something about what is Buddhism about. And I had no idea. If I spoke, I would have said something like, well, let's see, we have beads, we burn incense. I once made a wheel out of popsicle sticks. And, I had no clue. And so I very fortunately had a clever enough mind to get out of the moment somehow. And I asked, how much time left to class? And they said 20 minutes. And I said, 20 minutes is insufficient time for me to share what Buddhism is about. So they were so excited. They asked, maybe next time you could talk about it a little bit. And I said, oh, sure, of course. And so that's a Thursday. I have till Tuesday to figure out something to say about Buddhism. And, when you're a junior in college, you and then you just said, I was raised a Buddhist, and you have nothing to say about it. And it's embarrassing. So out of embarrassment, I went to the bookstore and library, and I heard that there was a new minister at the San Francisco Temple across the bay where I grew up. And I went to see him. And there I met Reverend Koshin Ogui, who at the time was, I think, 28 years old. And I thought, wow, he's very old, very wise. And he introduced me to many different ideas and books. And but I had told him I need to understand Buddhism now, And in that short time between Thursday and the following Tuesday, I was able to share something of what I understood now Buddhism to be. But I realized that I never really understood what it was. Growing up within a temple, having perfect attendance and 1 year absence award meant nothing. What does it mean? What does it mean to me? And I've come to feel that when we begin to have real questions, that's when we begin to really search. And I had a real question now because I had to try to explain something. I just said I grew up learning, and but getting through that class on Tuesday was, well, I don't know. I can't even remember it. I kind of blanked it out. But I do know that curiosity was planted, that I wanted to know more about Buddhism. And my childhood friend and classmate was Ron Kubata. And both of us actually one night talking, were finding ourselves curious about Buddhism. And this led us onto the Dharma path. We went to the then very small Institute of Buddhist Studies on Hay Street. And then we were able to go to Japan. But my intention was not to become a minister. I never thought to become a minister. I wanted enlightenment. I was a child of the 60s. The idealism was very deep. And I was seeking enlightenment. And when I found myself finishing in Japan and coming back, and they said, would you like to take a temple? I was assigned to the LA Betsuin. And it's then that at that time, I was, I think, 26 years old. And I was fortunate to be in Southern District with wonderful ministers at the LA Betsuin. I was able to be with George Machibayashi. Rimban was Ryue Masaoka, and Keizo Norimoto. They were wonderful teachers. And of course, there was Mas Kodani, who was at Senshin, just a few miles away. And there is when I first met Kerry and his sister Tammy and his mom and dad, very active members of Senshin. And so it was really nice to become reacquainted and hear where the journey of his life has taken him when we've been speaking the last few days. But I think the point I'm making here in talking about, what I felt as a college student being raised within a temple and yet knowing nothing about Buddhism and feeling that embarrassment. When we came to the Sacramento Betsuin, and maybe I should back up. After 4 years at the Los Angeles Betsuin, I quit. I said, yeah, I can't do this. And many times people are telling us how we should be, how you should be a minister, what you should do, how you should say it. And it wasn't until I think it was 1979, 1980 that I left, 1979, 80. In 1984, I came back and took temple with the accepted an assignment with the Sacramento Betsuin. Now I'm older, have been able to give it some thought about what I would like to do, and not thinking what what should I be doing because people told me this is what ministers are supposed to do. Thinking, what would I like to do if given the opportunity to serve at a temple? And the Sacramento Betsuin actually was very, very open. They inviting, and they were looking for someone maybe a little different. and and when Reverend Carey said they were looking for someone who is thinking outside of the box, I think my wife has said to me at times too are the years of our marriage. I think you have always been looking for the box. So uh, we came to Sacramento and we had a 5-year plan. And the plan was this: our goal, our vision was to try to have every child who's coming to our temple know why they're there. That if my feeling was, if someone says you're Buddhist, what is Buddhism? That they won't just be feeling as I felt in college in that classroom. They will have something to say. They will able to say something that means something to them and hopefully resonates with others. And that was our goal. And so we began focusing uh, on the 75 students we had in our Dharma school and trying to share the Dharma so that the every child there hopefully will understand it. And that next year in 1985, I began to teach the Metta Padma class. I think the first class had maybe 7 or 8 kids. And uh, this is when I really started to understand that I didn't understand what Buddhism was, not really. And I, I found myself facing a class of 8, 9, and 10-year-olds and talking about what Buddhism is and get these glazed looks and completely, looking off or uh, not connecting for sure. And I had to ask myself, if I can't explain the Dharma to these children, maybe I don't get it. Maybe I don't understand it enough to share it so people get it. And I had to really think, what is it that I understand? What is it that Buddhism is teaching me, is teaching us? And uh, I began then to try to gear it down more, not making it simpler, but making it more essential. What is the fundamental teaching here? What is it? What is the Dharma trying to share with us? And in teaching children, I learned how to teach, and for me, how to connect, and I really began to understand the Dharma, perhaps really for the first time. And I'd like to share. Oh, let's see. Before I go further, I should share the few of these pictures that were already up here. It's me in college or around that time. Carrie says he remembers me being like this when I came back from, back from Japan. And this is Patti and I. What a lucky woman. Look at that. And when we served at the State Assembly, we were very fortunate to be able to be there and invited to meet the Dalai Lama. And that was a wonderful moment. I got to personally thank him for all that he's done, being an ambassador for Buddhism and for world peace. And he just said to me, we are brothers, and it was very nice. And here we are in retirement. This is I think, our retirement picture. And okay, so what I'd like to do now very quickly is to share this booklet that was put together by one of our Dharma school students, Courtney Kashiwagi. It's an introduction to Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu. And here is where it comes from. Okay, this is the inside of the book. And this introduction to Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu began as the Girl Scout Gold Award project of Courtney Kashiwagi from the Sacramento Buddhist. In 1998, at the age of 9, Courtney received the Padma Award after attending my Buddhist Scouting Award program. And in 2006, for her Girl Scout Gold Award, she wanted to develop the supplementary study booklet based on the class lectures. So Courtney attended the class again, and she sat through my 10-week class, and then she put this booklet together, and it kind of capsulizes the class that that we began to share from 1985. As I learned more and more about how I can try to share the Dharma, understand the Dharma more deeply for myself. So here's what we taught for the kids. Okay. And these are Courtney's drawings, and this is the booklet, the pamphlet that she made. The beginning, 2,500 years ago, Prince Siddhartha Gautama was born on April 8th in the Lumbini Garden. He was the only child of King Suddhodana and Queen Maya. And let's see. Then he was raised by his aunt Prajapati. Then there are pictures of all the main players. And the legend of Siddhartha, that he was said he would become either a great warrior or a spiritual leader. And of course, his dad wanted him to be a great warrior, and surrounded him with things that would make him not too contemplative, keep him happy and keep him amused. But it said that Siddhartha, the famous story of the four gates, although he was isolated and shown only good things, that the legend says that even when he left the palace, the palace grounds, that guards would go ahead of him and tell everyone, be happy, be happy. And if there was something that was unsightly, they had it removed. And if there was someone very old or very sick, they would have them not seen on the road. But as the same famous story of the four gates goes, Siddhartha went out of the gates, and in first trip he encountered an old person, then a sick person, then a funeral, and then he encountered a monk. But each time he found himself wondering more and more about life. And although he married, and at the age of 19, then he had a son, Rahula, he continued to think deeply about life. And after Rahula was born, Siddhartha decided to give up his inheritance, his title, his kingdom, all his possessions, and he became a monk. He became a seeker of truth. He was looking for his happiness. And so Siddhartha's journey to enlightenment, from age 29 to 35, he was seeking truth from the various teachers that were well known in his time. There were 5 monks that followed him because he was so dedicated. They knew that if anyone was going to find the truth, it would be Siddhartha. And in living a life of renunciation, uh, he finally gave up, giving up all pleasures, but even the pleasure of eating. So he was fasting, and the legend of Siddhartha said he was then surviving on 1 grain of rice a day. And he knew that although he was very close to dying, he was no closer to understanding the truth. So he took nourishment, and then regaining his strength, the legend says he sat down beneath a beautiful Bodhi tree that afterwards was called the Bodhi tree. And he attained enlightenment. But the story also talks about his 5 friends, the monks who followed him. When Siddhartha ate and took nourishment, they said, he wimped out, he gave up, he's a loser, and they left him. But Siddhartha sat in contemplation and awakened on the morning of December 8th. The legend says that he awakened, and his awakening was called enlightenment. And from that moment, he's called the Shakyamuni Buddha. And I would share with the children in my Metta Padma classes that Shakyamuni Buddha indicates, which Buddha he is. Buddha means one who is awake. Shakya is his family name, and Muni means wise person. So Shakyamuni Buddha means he is the Buddha from the Shakya family, the wise person from the Shakya family who awakened. And so I would tell the kids, if you become a Buddha, you might be called the Sacramento Muni Buddha, the wise person from Sacramento, to be the Makawao Muni Buddha, the wise person from Makawao who awakened. So then Siddhartha went to the deer park, found his 5 monk friends, and he shared with them the teaching of the Dharma. And it's there at the deer park. And I should back up here and I was going to ask you all to become 9 years old again, because I will be speaking and have been speaking and will be speaking actually to the 9-year-old within you. Okay? So the Buddha then at the deer park, for the first time, the 3 treasures were together. The Buddha sharing the Dharma with the first Sangha of 5 monks. And the first thing he taught was middle path. And the middle path, of course, is the path of no extremes. And we're going to go into this at the later workshops much more. But I would say one example of middle path is in terms of time, middle path is the present. It's a middle between the past and the future. And then the second part of his first turning of the wheel of the Dharma, after middle path, he taught the 4 Noble Truths. Now, here, rather than say life is suffering, because I never really cared for that. Actually, the definition I really like to explain dukkha, the first of the 4 Noble Paths, my mentor and teacher, Miyuki Sensei, would use the word dis-ease, that we're always uncomfortable. And that discomfort, that dis-ease can be from, feeling just minor stress, or maybe getting in the shower and it's too cold or too hot, to knowing truly the dis-ease, the sadness of knowing real loss in life. So the way I taught it to my kids is that, saying life is suffering, they're 9 years old, they're 8, what they're going to say, well, I don't know, I don't feel like I'm suffering all the time. Even us, we don't feel like we're suffering all the time. But life is tough. Life is tough. Life is challenging. And if you say life is tough, everyone just nods their head. Life is tough. The second of the 4 Noble Truths, life is tough because we're selfish. We want so much. And the third of the 4 Noble Truths, the way to make life not so tough, don't want so much. Don't be selfish. And the fourth, the way to help us not be selfish, follow the Eightfold Path. And then we would introduce the Eightfold Path. And then every class session, maybe from the second or third session on, the last 15 minutes or 10 minutes, we would be in the Hondo, learning Hondo etiquette and how to Oshoko. And so this part of the etiquette, Courtney added to the book. And Oshoko, what does it mean? How do we do it? What does it symbolize? And then explaining Buddhism. Okay, that essentially Buddhism is the teaching of change and oneness. And we call this in Sacramento the two eyes of Buddhism: impermanence and interdependence. And so understanding impermanence and interdependence was the focus of the entire class, and actually maybe my entire career. And then we talked about the history of Buddhism. And again, imagine these are 8, 9, and 10-year-olds understanding how Buddhism traveled from India into throughout, up into China, Southeast Asia to Japan. And then introducing Shinran Shonin. So we tell the story of Shinran and that how he, after losing, and yes, we know there's so many stories that are told about people in history. And when I was very young, they would say that Shinran was an orphan by 9. And then later we hear that, well, his mom passed away, but his dad, he became a monk because the politics of the time. But whatever the reason, he was without his parents when he was 9 years old. And then he went to Mount Hiei. This is all very simple. And for 20 years he was there. And he tried his best to achieve his enlightenment. But on Mount Hiei, Shinran realized that no matter how hard he tried, and this is the beauty of Shinran. To me, what I admire most about Shinran is both his honesty and his humility. His honesty, that he's going to really look within and not pretend, and then to be truly humble. So Shinran looked within, and he really honestly saw that no matter how hard I try, still within me I feel the 3 poisons. I feel greed, anger, ignorance. And at the age of 29, he left Mount Hiei and went down into the city, and he found his teacher, Honen Shonin, who taught him the Nembutsu path. So the 3 poisons, we would call the third one stupidity, just so they can remember gas. The 3 poisons: greed, anger, and stupidity. But I would explain to the kids that Buddhist stupidity is not 1 + 1 = 3. Buddhism, the ignorance, if you look at the word ignorance, there's the word ignore. Buddhist stupidity is when we ignore the realities of impermanence and interdependence. When we forget that truly everything is impermanent and that all things are interconnected in one. That's what Shinran was feeling. No matter how hard I try, still I feel moments of that I'm selfish, that I'm feeling, and I forget that all things are connected and that nothing is forever, and I don't feel grateful. So Honen taught Shinran the Nembutsu path. And Nembutsu is really Namo Amida Butsu, to think deeply upon, to center our lives on, Amida Buddha. And Amida is a concept. So explaining Amida to a 9-year-old, to say, okay, here it is, right? And this is my fault here. I am the editor here. Courtney put all this together, and I didn't catch this in an editing. I was just so enjoying her book so much. But let's see, where's the cursor of it? Amitabha on the left is infinite understanding. and Amitayus on the right is the immeasurable caring. So Amitabha is wisdom, and Amitayus is caring. So it's just we have to switch that over. But this was the essence of Siddhartha's enlightenment. Now, so if asked, what is the essence of Siddhartha's enlightenment? They would say, immeasurable compassion and wisdom. And so let's see. Then we would talk about Namo Amida Butsu. So again, imagine this is a group of 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. And Namo Amida Butsu, center our lives on Amida Buddha. This means to be centered on the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and the teachings. And to experience gratitude beyond words. This is, I think, really an important concept for me when I came to see that, no, this would be my feeling, our feeling of how to explain Nembutsu is just feeling of gratitude beyond words. And the wowness factor, I would tell the kids that Nembutsu has a feeling. There's a feeling to Nembutsu. And you're almost saying Nembutsu all the time. Every time you say, wow, no way. Huh? Every time you say, wow, you're almost saying Nembutsu. It's a feeling of Nembutsu is in there. The feeling of Nembutsu is in there. When change happens, and change is constant, but when significant change happens in our lives, we usually respond with wow, like if you win the lottery, wow, all right. Or, I remember when, like I mentioned, Ron Kobata and I grew up together, and his mom and dad, very, very good to me. I felt always such a deep affection for Reverend Ron's mom and dad. His dad, he was a watchmaker, and he would fix my watch so many times. I mean, I had this watch that always needed repair. And when I wasn't wearing it, when he'd see me, he'd say, "Hey, Bobby, where's your watch?" And I said, "Oh," and he goes, "Did it break again?" "Oh, yeah, bring it in." And he fixed it so many times. He was such a good man. And if I was over at their house, sometimes, Ron and I would be in his room, and it would be 2 a.m, and we're just hanging out in there. And there was a knock on the door, and I said, "Oh, it's probably his mom or dad saying, Bobby, you should go home." But the first time, and almost, all the times when we were there really late, if I was there really late, Ron opened the door, and his dad came in, and he had sandwiches and drinks. And he said, "I thought you guys might get getting hungry." His dad was just the sweetest man. When Ron called me and told me that his dad passed away, I remember first thing that came out of my mouth was, wow,